I am a member of the Adirondack Diversity Initiative, and I would like to welcome you all to Driving While Black Part 2. Before we begin, I would like to apologize for any technical difficulties you may have experienced. We had an issue on our end, and if you're struggling to get on, we understand, and we apologize once again for any of the technical problems that you may be facing while trying to attend this session. First, I would like to thank our sponsors, the Adirondack Museum, the Adirondack Diversity Initiative, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and also Governor Cuomo. Prior to us starting this session, I would like to preface it with several things. This session is designed for current and former residents of the Adirondacks to share their experiences regarding law enforcement within the Adirondacks. The chat feature will be available throughout the entire session. So if you have any questions for any of the panelists or myself, please type it in. And what we're going to do is we're going to respond to your questions 20 minutes prior to the session ending. I would like to say that this is going to be an informal session, so hopefully we can have a casual conversation and we can all learn and grow from this experience. Now, I would like to say this, and this is very important, and understand the complexity and the severity of the climate now. Now, we had a lot more panelists, and many of those panelists backed out due to fear of retaliation, whether it's against their jobs, their families, based off of, in Adirondacks, there are not too many Black individuals and communities, and they feared out of retaliation. So hopefully all of the listeners can understand that these gentlemen here today are really stepping out and speaking up and telling their stories. And I applaud you guys for your courage, especially during these times. So what I would like to do is I would like to introduce our panelists. We have Dominic Boone. He's currently the head men's basketball coach / sports information director within an institution of higher education. He previously held the same position at Paul Smith College for 4 years, where he resurrected their athletics program, their men and women's basketball program. How you doing, sir? Next, I would like to introduce Mr. Matthew Hughey. He was born and raised in Plattsburgh. He graduated from Plattsburgh High School. He has lived in various states across the country, and he is currently residing in Saratoga Springs. He is currently the program manager for cybersecurity for a popular fast food chain throughout the country. He's in charge of all of their program management. Gentlemen, welcome. All right, so we're going to begin. All right, so gentlemen, I have a few questions for you. You can answer independently. You can take your mics off. So first question, I'll direct that towards Dominic. How long have you lived in the Adirondacks?
Yeah, we lived in the Adirondacks for 4 years.
Okay. And Matthew, I know in your bio, I kind of expressed it, but how long have you been here?
So I've been here for lived here for about 20 plus years altogether.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of this whole discussion. So what is your experience been like with police in Adirondacks? Dominic, if you can start first, kind of talking about some of the situations you've experienced, and then once he's finished, Matthew, if you can follow up and express your situation as well.
All right, and you're just basically just kind of like our experience so far driving while Black, I assume, right?
Yes, sir. Yes,
all right.
Sir.
Yeah. So like I said, we lived there for 4 years, and when we first moved there, and so that's kind of about a 35 to 45 minute drive. And at the time, you know, I was back and forth because my wife was pregnant with that. It was a lot going on, having to do a lot of back and forth and things like that. But just during the time I got pulled over, let's see here, in the first 2 months, I got pulled over probably 6 to 8 times and only got 1 ticket. And then fast forward a couple years later, we had moved on campus. And so while we were on campus, I really didn't drive that much. But then when we moved back off campus again, we lived in Saranac Lake. And at the time, I had Georgia plates, and my pullover time got ramped up again. I ended up getting pulled over just three more times within probably about the first month of me getting in the car, and yeah. Only got one ticket again. And once people realized who I was, they kind of just let me go on my merry way, and things like that. But yeah, it was always just kind of constantly checking in to see who is that guy driving in that car.
Okay, so can you give us any specific incidences that you've experienced while driving in the Adirondacks that you felt that you were being profiled or you felt were kind of suspect?
Yeah, majority of the time it was always asking the questions of.
Okay, so it seems as if we're having some technical difficulties with Dominic's internet. So Matthew, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so Matthew, so same question. Can you give a little background on your experience in the Adirondacks, but also your situation with a lot of your situations with the police? And Dominic, we want to get back to you. Your internet was breaking in and out. Okay.
Yeah, so again, I was born and raised in upstate New York, live in the Adirondacks. I live in Saratoga now. So I've traveled a lot through the Adirondacks, and unfortunately, I definitely have had some negative experiences with law enforcement. But again, I've had some great experiences. Not all law enforcement is bad. Definitely not here to bash, but I do hope to spread an awareness of just an open discussion about Black people driving in upstate New York in the Adirondacks. So to share a couple of those experiences real quick with you guys, there was unfortunate incidents. I was working. I had my, I won't say the company, but it was a local company. I had my uniform on. I had my truck with me. The truck has the logo on it. I had my badge, or I had all my equipment, everything like that. And law enforcement came up to me. I was maybe 300 feet away from my truck doing some work on a location. And so law enforcement came up, wasn't doing anything wrong, had no real business coming up to me, but came up to me and asked me for my badge. They asked me where I was working. I told my name, everything like that. My badge and my ID were in my truck. So they asked me for that. So I said, okay, no problem. As I go to walk to my truck to get my badge, my identification, I'm casual, no issues, nothing alarming. I'm a pretty respectful, fair person. So I like to think if you don't do anything wrong, you have nothing to hide. Unfortunately, I've learned with law enforcement that's not the case all the time. As I was walking to my truck, the officer sees my truck. He then goes ahead and he takes his vehicle, parks it right next to my truck, opens his door up, and then pulls out his gun and points it at me. And as I'm walking toward my truck, he's right next to it with his door open, his gun pointed at me behind his door as he's telling me to walk towards him. And so I had about 300 feet to walk. There's no one else around the area. So in my mind, I was, I think, 19, 20 years old. My life was in this man's hands. And it was a he said, she said, well, he said kind of deal with if anything would have happened. I had no protection. I had no I wasn't breaking the law. I was doing my job, and this was obviously a officer who saw the color of my skin, and unfortunately I worked with most of the my coworkers are predominantly white, and I obviously am not, so they've never had that situation happen to them. It was a coincidence, I guess, that it happened to me. So I walked to my truck, and he has his gun drawn on me. He kind of continues to keep his gun on me while I reach for my badge, and I reach for my wallet to get my identification out. So I give it to him. He checks my truck to see if I have any drugs or any weapons, anything like that, in my company vehicle. And he sees there's nothing in there. He doesn't smell marijuana. I have no record. I didn't have a track record, so didn't have anything. He asked me if I had warrants, and again, I'm at my job and working, and he's asking me if I have any warrants. I tell him no. So he runs my everything, sees nothing going on, and then he says, "Have a good day," and lets me go. Just kind of one of those deals where unfortunate to be, you can say it could happen to anyone, but again, I work with a lot of, at the time I worked with a lot of white coworkers, and that situation never once happened to them. They've been in that location, they've been in that area. Me being black, I just kind of put two and two together and left it at that. So that was definitely a very scary time in my life with law enforcement, where I feared for my life. Anything could have happened at that time. I still was respectful, remained calm the whole time, didn't want to cause any issues or anything like that. I was young, and so that happened. So another situation, I was driving down the interstate 87 South, and the cop pulls me over. I had Ohio license. State trooper pulls me over. Asked him if I was speeding or what the deal was, and he said, "I see you're out of state." And I said, "Yeah." He says, "What are you doing in New York?" And I said, "I'm from New York." He asked how long I'm gonna plan on staying, kind of deal, just where I work. A bunch of questions that have no relative meaning to anything. He didn't pull me over for any reason. He didn't give me a ticket. I wasn't speeding. No issue. We just saw a black man driving with out-of-state license and out-of-state plates, and that was it. So again, I was respectful, calm, cool, collective. He definitely had a demeanor of, I would say, not intimidation, but he was ready for something to pop off. Even though I was doing nothing, but he was tense. He was kind of shaking. He was kind of stern in his voice. Definitely expecting. It was almost like he was expecting something to happen. And again, I remained calm, cool, collective. And that was another unfortunate experience that I've had. I do have a lot of friends, New York State troopers, and I spoke to them about a couple of these incidences, and got some really good advice from them. They said, when a cop pulls you over, if it's dark out, especially if it's dark out, turn your car lights on so they can see inside the car. Have your window rolled down, and have your license and registration already ready for them. Turn your music down, flip your hat forward. This is all state troopers that I know that gave me this advice, and they said they will profile you. If they see that the car's dark, they're gonna flash lights, make sure that they're safe, so turn the lights on. If they see you have loud music, you have your hat on backwards, they're gonna smell for marijuana. They're gonna check to see, try to find something that's not there. Not all of them, but just to keep on the safe side. They said, unfortunately, Matt, that's the way it is up here. And they said, oh, go ahead.
So Matt, so your experiences, and Dominic, you as well, were your experiences with state police, or were they like city police?
I've had experience with both, actually. More so the state police, it was kind of like, here's what we pulled you over for, going your merry way. Those are the only times I really got a ticket, were the 2 times ticket were state police. The other ones were more city, local police. And story, and basically just kind of seeing. I had out-of-state tags because I had just moved up there from Philly the first time we were living in Lake Placid, and then when I got my father's car, I still had my Georgia tags, or his Georgia tag, should I say? And it was just kind of like, hey, what are you doing here? Pretty much. What are you doing here? How long are you going to be here? Just trying to get the lowdown on what we're doing up here. Like it kind of felt like, in a sense, like we're not supposed to be up here.
So, gentlemen, when you were having these experiences, just for our viewers and our listeners, because I'm a Black male, I've gone through this myself. What kind of thoughts were going through your heads at the time? Were you in fear for your life? Were you frustrated? Were you angry? Were you feeling like, why me? So just give the audience an experience, an idea of what it feels like internally while these things are taking place. Dominic, you can start.
All right. It's all a little mixed emotions, man. For the most part, I guess I kind of sum up as disappointing of just having to go through that. But yeah, I couldn't necessarily say angry, frustrated for sure, because you kind of just like, why are you pulling me over for no reason when I'm just trying to get to work, or I'm trying to get home. Really, that's the only reason why I was driving anyway most of the time up there, because there's really nothing to drive to. But yeah, it's frustrating and disappointing. I would have to say is my two, just because given the times that we're in, one would have hoped that like really you've seen people like me before up there. So it's just like, I don't know. I honestly can't explain it. I can't explain it.
Okay, and Matt, and on your situations, you actually had an officer pull a gun out on you. So did he explain anything? How were you feeling in that moment? Because I'm sure that was a scary moment. You're going to work in your work vehicle, you figured you're safe, you shouldn't have any problems. So how was that for you? And did the officer ever explain anything about why that happened? And to follow up on that question, did you ever file a complaint? If so, what was the result? And if not, why?
So it was definitely like I said, profiling and a sense of empowerment of, I can do this and there's nothing really you can do to stop me. And I think that was mostly it. He knew what I was doing. I had my truck, I had my lights on, I had everything going. He knew what was up. He just, the color of my skin, he didn't see a lot of people my skin color working at that job, so it threw him off. No, I didn't file a complaint because it was a routine location for me. So the next time that I actually went to that location, they said he retired, coincidentally. So I didn't, like I said, I was 19, maybe 20 years old at the time. I didn't really know too much, didn't get too involved in it. They said he retired, so we kind of left it at that. But I know it was profiling. I know when you're an African American, when you're Black, that feeling. The body language, the tone in their voice. It's not something where it's, if you do nothing wrong, then they'll leave you alone. So yeah, that would answer your question in my end.
Okay. Yeah, and what I want to do, and I really didn't plan on doing this, but I'll share a little experience as well. When I first came to the Adirondacks, I was actually living in sort of like the Watertown area. I was new to the area, and I was exploring. And I was on the highway, just riding around, trying to figure out, what kind of activities and, basically what's the area. I was driving on the highway. Speed limit. I make sure I always have my cruise control on because, I'm not trying to get pulled over for excessive speed. And it's easy in this area because everything is just straight, it's open, and it's open to speeding. Speed limit on, and I saw a police officer just driving behind me, no problem. And then he went in front of me. And it kind of went on for about maybe a mile and a half. So eventually he ended up getting back behind me. And I was like, what is this about? And at the time I was driving like a BMW X3. You know, I was dressed professionally like I am now. And I was actually out driving to find my fiance. She was coming up. So I wanted to find some activities for her to do. She was in Maryland and she was coming up to visit me at the time. So I was excited. And I got pulled over. And I was confused. I was like, what's going on? So when the guy pulled me over, he came up on my passenger side. He had his hand on his gun or his weapon. And he came up to the window, to the passenger side window, and he expressed that my tags to my car were coming up as stolen. And I was confused. I'm like, huh? I'm like, how is this possible? Because I asked him, I said, why am I being pulled over? Because I was very curious. I was following the speed limits. My lights worked. Nothing was wrong. I was just driving. And he said, yeah, your tags are coming up stolen. We can't read your tags. Now, originally I'm from Maryland, and being from New York, I still had my Maryland tag, so maybe that was some of it as well. He expressed that, you know, my tags were coming up as stolen, and he couldn't read them for whatever reason. That was new to me, because in Maryland, I've never had a situation where a police would just scan your tags just for whatever reason. But I guess since I've been up here, I've been pulled over a lot. I guess that's just what New York does. You know, I don't know. So he pulled me over, he started asking me a bunch of questions. Where I work, do I have any warrants? Where am I coming from? Where am I going? And the funny thing about it is he asked for my license, my registration. So I don't know if you guys have that same reservation, especially over the past few years with all of the police shootings and everything, because this is not a new incident. The whole George Floyd thing is nothing new. And, you know, driving while black, especially being a black male, you always have that, what's going to come out of this situation? My wallet is normally in my armrest. So I said, hey, can I get my wallet out of my armrest? Because I don't want anybody thinking I'm reaching for a gun or I'm doing anything, you know, that's going to threaten their lives. He said, yeah, it's fine. So he asked me that question, where do you work? So I told him where I worked at the time. The whole atmosphere changed. We ended up having some discussion. I explained to him, like, look, I'm trying to find something for my fiance's coming up, something to do, da-da-da-da-da. And basically to sum it up, at the end of the whole situation, I said, okay, so do you still need my information? He was like, nah. You know? And I'm like, you didn't tell me my car has come up as being stolen. I got pulled over and I have the information for you. And because you felt that I wasn't a threat, or at least that's how I felt, that everything was okay, hunky-dory. But during that moment, that was the only time I've ever been pulled over by a police officer. And I'm originally from Baltimore City, that I felt like my life might be threatened. And I was actually, and I told people, I said, man, this was crazy. And, you know, I was dressed like this. I was professionally dressed. You know, I didn't fit a profile, but I felt that fear of I might get shot. And I never felt that way in a police interaction before. So I wanted to say that, and to ask you all, have you been in a situation where, similar situation, and can you resonate or relate to that story when people find out where you work or what you do, that the whole dynamics change, but you're still kind of shaking up and dealing with the situation? Dominic, if you could start. I know we've been having some issues with your internet, so if you could start, that'd be great. And Matthew, if you could follow up, that'd be great as well.
Sure, thanks.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, very similar situation to you. And actually, majority of the times is I always got pulled over by a different officer. So it's almost like, you know, that officer had to get to know who I am first. And then after that, I wouldn't get pulled over, you know, by that officer that was on duty again. And I know there's other officers that, you know, work different shifts and things like that. But it was almost like, you know, oh, that's Dominique. He's good. We don't have to worry about him. So far as like what you were saying about, you know, once they figure out who you are and what you do, it's kind of like, oh, you're good. You know, we don't have to worry about you. One of those things. So I can definitely relate to your story.
And Matthew, you've been here longer than all of us. How has it been for you?
So Plattsburgh is a very small community, small town. So to Dominique's point, there was an instance where I got pulled over for running a stop sign. I stopped completely. I saw the cop. I stopped completely, but sure enough, he pulls me over, and then he asks for my license. And when he sees who I am, he this was back in I think in high school or college, something like that. And no joke, he asked for my autograph. He says his son's a big fan of mine. I played sports at the time, basketball and football and stuff like that. So because at first I was like, I didn't run that stop sign. I know I didn't, and it was a little confrontational. Then I show him my license, and he sees who I am, and yeah, kid you not, I signed a little autograph for his only autograph I've ever signed, but signed a little autograph for his kid, and he lets me out. He lets me go, and we left it at that. So. And that's if they know in Plattsburgh, definitely if they know you, they obviously more likely to let you off or give you a warning. It's my issue has been, especially with city cops, that I'd like to see something addressed. Is I don't understand. Many times I've been pulled over by city cops, and it's been 2, 3, 4 cars deep for a brake light out, and I see the same kind of deal with white people where they only get one cop car. And before they run my tag, before anything, I'll see 3, 4 cars pull up on me, cop cars, and I don't understand why there's that difference of a threat. And I'd really like to see that something about that get changed.
Okay, so when those situations happen, are you fearing for your life? What is your perspective on that? I know Dominic, he responded earlier. So how is that experience for you, being at your local? You, like you said earlier, you were an athlete, you were a star athlete, people knew you. How does it make you feel being that you're a local here? And when you were here, you were having that type of treatment? Right.
So that's why it's like Dominic said, there's a lot of mixed feelings because it's sad that you know that your people that you know are pulling you over before they know who you are, mostly because of the color of your skin. They're kind of profiling, they're following you around the city, they're tracking, they're kind of waiting to see if you mess up or what you're doing. They're running your plates, tracking you. And then when you get pulled over, they see who you are, and then they're cool with you. So you know that they're already in that mindset, even though they didn't know who you were, they just saw what you look like, and there's already kind of that mindset there. But then they're cool with you once they realize who you are. But then you have those ones that don't know you, and yes, that's why that state, a couple of my cop friends, they say, get your license, registration, lights on as soon as you get pulled over. That way there's no air about trying to shuffle through your glove box or shuffle to get your wallet. There's no anything like that. That way you protect yourself, because I, like you and Dominic, before I had that conversation, I constantly feared, are they going to say, when I reach for my glove box to get my registration, are they going to pull one out on me? And there's I don't know if it's an intimidation or what kind of threat we pose, but there's a serious, you can feel that vibe of emotions between the officer and yourself when you haven't really done anything that serious, and they're waiting for it. So.
Okay, so gentlemen, you've all had these experiences with these, either whether it was state troopers or city police. Were they older? Were they younger? Were they in training? Like, you may not remember directly, but what can you recall?
A wide variety. I can't necessarily pinpoint a specific age group that that does this, but no, it's a wide variety. I've had younger guys. I actually had one guy. It was a local officer who pulled me over, and when I told him that I coached at Paul Smith's, he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm a graduate there." And then we kind of got in a friendly conversation from there. But yeah, it's just a wide variety from young to middle age to guys who are probably about to retire in a couple of years.
Okay, now I know that this conversation is about driving while black, but I think it's very important that we have this conversation. primarily because I'm Black. I live in the Adirondacks. I'm probably one of the only ones in my neighborhood, and I'm sure you all probably were in the same situation or currently are in the same situation. So outside of just interactions with police, how has the interaction been with your neighbors, people in the community? How has that interaction been, especially being a Black male and the history of white America when it comes to interacting with Black males? If you can kind of briefly kind of go over that, I want to still stay on time and to open this up for questions, because I think it'll be very, very interesting that people can hear from other guys, Black men in the community.
Like I said, we lived there for 4 years before moving, and it's for I guess for me it was pretty isolating. Mm-hmm. You know, I had people in my department at work that I was great friends with, and then we had made friends with a couple people within the community. But just so far as like, having a sense of, I guess, family, I really didn't feel that sense of family and belonging so far as within the community. But needless to say, we did find people there. I'm not saying it was horrible, but definitely it was isolating for us, or at least for myself.
Okay, and Matt, and after you speak, Matt, I'm getting questions. We'll go into the question part, because I think that's going to be the most beneficial part of this whole discussion, and all of y'all voices and really answering these questions.
Right. I'll wrap mine up quick. For the majority, great. It's been, like I said, me and my family lived here most of all my life, for the most part, and really great experiences. I've had 4, outside of officers, I've had 4 guns drawn on me from, it's always, they say that there's a few bad apples. Unfortunately, there's more than a few that people want to suggest, but in the North Country, I've noticed a lot of people treat you great to your face if they know you, but unfortunately there's still some prejudice out there, and you go to the wrong parts, you go to the wrong areas where even if you're not doing anything wrong, there's people who are willing and ready to pull a gun on you because of the color of your skin. But I'll leave it at that, and we can get these questions rolling.
Okay, so we have we have a comment from a Black female. She says she's lived here for 5 years. She's stopped counting, and she has 15 pullovers that she's counted. She has a PhD. She's always been professional. She has no tickets, and she drove to Governor several times a week. She was stopped by police and border patrol. She complained, but her white colleagues basically made excuses about it, so she gave up. And it was a large reason why she left her job. So for the listeners, these are things that take place where at a point where people don't really understand or believe your stories, that you just figured why even stay in an area where people aren't trying to hear your voice. So, gentlemen, what are your perspectives on that? Having these issues, trying to talk to some of your white counterparts, they're not really trying to understand you, they're not listening, and it just makes it seem like you're just being paranoid or extra sensitive to the situation. I'll go through that. So how does that feel?
Yeah, I don't necessarily speak about it with my colleagues, but my wife does. My wife does. She's white, but within one of her groups, she was trying to explain, I guess, the times that I was getting pulled over when we first moved up there, and I guess some of the women in her group were trying to equate that with, well, there's speed traps, and my husband got pulled over this many times too because he was speeding. But the thing is, I wasn't speeding or anything. I didn't get tickets like they did. So, and they couldn't necessarily put that together and be able to understand or relate to what my wife was trying to say.
And man, have you had a similar experience?
Yeah, exactly to the last part that Dominique said. It's all about relating. And I noticed, like I said, I've lived here most of my life. Um, there's a great percentage, there's an increasing percentage of white people who are definitely trying to understand, relate, sympathize, and change the way that we are being treated in the Adirondacks. They want it to be a safe environment for Blacks and welcoming. There's still too large of a percentage that I've talked to personally that if it doesn't relate to them, they don't understand. They'll relate it to the protesters, the rioters. They'll relate it to all these other issues that aren't really on topic and find that as a way to misdirect the conversation. So it's an inconvenient truth to them.
So gentlemen, real quick, and I'm gonna move to another question. So when you hear these things, how does that make you feel? Because I think the most important part or piece of this is that some people don't take in consideration how, when you're trying to explain your story, when you're trying to speak out, people dismiss you. How does that make you feel as a person who knows that these things are happening and it's dismissed as, well, I got pulled over last week? You know, how does that make you feel as a Black person driving in this community?
I feel like I just have to go over the top to be non-threatening.
And Matt?
Yeah, exactly the same thing. Hat forward, music down, lights on, go over the top to be non-threatening, knowing anything. They say if you don't do anything, nothing's gonna happen. But you know, your life is in their hands. It's you've seen it, I've experienced it, and I feel powerless. I feel like it's out of my hands. Whatever I do, it's up to them.
Okay, and I think that's very important for our listeners to hear, that sense of powerlessness. I know when I'm in those situations, I just think I have family, you know, hopefully this doesn't go sideways. You know, hopefully I don't get shot over something and then no one believes that I was innocent, you know. And that's one of those feelings you have when you're getting pulled over. And I know from personal experience, the worst is when you have your kids in the car or you have your significant other in the car and you go through that because it's sort of like demasculating in a way, and your kids are seeing what happens, and you don't know what's going to come out of that situation. So I think that's very important that listeners understand that when we're in these situations and there's really no justifiable reason for the pull over, you just feel like, hey, you don't know what's going to happen. Now, from my personal experience, if I'm speeding, I'm speeding. I understand, you know. But when it's just a random thing where you're confused why you get pulled over, that's when that fear sets in and that uncertainty sets in that something might go wrong depending on how this interaction plays out. Let me get to the next question. Person says, if while driving, I'm a middle-aged white lady, see a Black person pulled over by law enforcement, would it be helpful if I pulled over to witness your experience and perhaps advocate on your behalf, utilize my white privilege that way, or would that not help at all? Gentlemen?
Well, I mean, I hate to say it, and I don't want to sound like going overboard. Honestly, I would feel safer if I had a white friend or a white person that pulled over and just recorded it. I would just feel safer. Just from my experiences, I would love that. That way it's not just me and an officer.
Dominic?
Record and report.
Yeah.
Record and report. So yeah, I agree with Matt. So if you want to get in the car with me, that's even better.
Right, exactly.
Okay, we have another question. It says, of all the pullovers, what percentage of them were for legitimate reasons? We'll start with you, Dominic, first, and then Matt, if you can follow up, that'd be great.
Yeah, like I said, I was probably pulled over a total of 9 times, but all of them were within like a short span. And out of those 9 times, 3 times I legitimately was like, yeah, my brake light's legitimately out, or I need to change this tag. So I never would speak. I'll definitely tell you that. But yeah, three out of the 9 times I was.
And then for me, most of them weren't legitimate. There definitely were some that were legitimate. What I want to take away from that question is, legitimate or not, you shouldn't have to feel threatened or feel fear for your life for speeding or for having a brake light out or have 4 cops on you for not using the turn signal. I think that's the biggest takeaway is, yes, if you break the law, you need to pay up, you need to be accountable, but what extent is too extreme on the law enforcement's end where a brake light shouldn't cause a life-threatening instance?
Okay, so we have another question. If we are to attract a more diverse set of visitors and new residents, it seems like an immediate step should be to hire more local police, state troopers, et cetera, who are Black or people of color. Do you agree? And also the second part is, what do you see as the benefits of this? Like having more Black officers within the Adirondacks. Do you think that's necessary, and do you see it as a benefit? And why?
I can start. I think it is. I think it'd be a great thing. The more Black people of color, the more different you can bring to the Adirondacks, the better. But also too, it has to go beyond and just bringing people of color, bringing black people to the Adirondacks. There also too needs to be it has to be more than just education and just like telling folks like, you don't need to be this way, blah, blah, blah. It has to be a whole type of like movement that needs to happen within the area to kind of break the stigma and just get, everybody to hopefully change and have an open eye.
Okay, and Matthew, you seem like you've had a whole lot more life-threatening, literally guns pointed at you situations. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, a great idea. I love that. If we could get a more diverse law enforcement, more diversity in the judicial system around of the Adirondacks, and I think it would balance. As I said, it has to be education. There has to be training that takes place for all officers in handling current situations, but it would never ever hurt to have more diverse law enforcement agencies. And my dad, he came from Queens, and he's now lives in upstate. I think there are more African Americans Blacks coming upstate, and I think that would be a great idea.
Okay, so we have some more questions. Audience honor that. Okay, so it says, so what sort of responses are you hoping white folks listening can have walking away from tonight's session? Like, basically, what do you want our listeners to get out of this? Like, what do you want them to know out of this session? And also understand that it's probably so many other experiences, but we're kind of strapped for time. We could probably talk all day, but what do you want people to get out of this type of discussion? Because right now, police and Black community, it's a big thing going on right now, and it's very tense. And like I said earlier, I really appreciate you guys coming on because we had a lot more people, but they were scared of retaliation. So what do you want people to get from this conversation tonight so they can walk away with something, whether it's to intervene, whether it's to assist, whether it's to stop doing it themselves? What do you want people to get from this situation, this conversation?
If you hear a child screaming in the background, my third child is having a little tantrum downstairs, so I'm trying to hold that, keep that at bay right now at the corner, out of my ear over here. But main thing is just just realizing that everybody's experiences are different, and like just to have that open mindedness and understanding and just being willing to step in somebody else's shoes and be like, what, probably all right, and not just write it off of like, that's not how I experienced it, so you shouldn't experience it that way either. So just having an open mind and being willing to, you know, step in somebody else's shoes and see it from their point of view, and just being open to seeing it. So not just having that cloth over your face.
Okay, now, so Matthew, did you want to respond?
Yeah, an awareness of awareness, and and not like Dominic was saying, not to be blind to other people's experiences just because yours aren't the same, and an awareness of what really is happening in the Black community, as well as the lady who said, "Would you like me to pull over and record it?" I wish I would have had that for some of my situations. So that kind of deal would be great. Yep.
Okay, then we had another question that said, what community agency or nonprofit organizations address these concerns? Now, I can say the ADI, I know we're working on some things now. I don't want to get too much into that. If you have any questions, please contact the Adirondack Diversity Initiative, and we can follow up with some of the things that we're working on now. Okay, so another question, what can the audience do in response to tonight's session? Do you feel the solution is to have more Black state troopers? Okay, let's see. Okay, let me see. I'm sorry, I'm reading through these chats, so don't mind me. Okay, so I drove while Black, and as a young Black man driving in a high-profile car, orange Charger with tents. I was accused of DWI, the DUI. I've never been more scared in my life because I'm alone in a red state by myself. And it's just a lot to be Black in this society. I just say be careful at all times because we are feared here. Do you guys have that feeling of, especially being a Black male, and I emphasize that because of the history of the country when it comes to Black men? Do you all feel that a lot of the reactions and a lot of things that are taking place in the Adirondacks, but also the country, is due to the fear and paranoia of Black males?
So I can attest to what that gentleman, his story. When my granddaddy died, he gave me a Cadillac, a real nice Cadillac. I was driving that around the city, and sure enough, I had a couple cops. I was younger. I wasn't doing anything wrong, but of course, I had a couple cops following me, and I had no idea why. So I called my dad to ask him. I was worried. I was scared because they weren't pulling me over. They're just profiling. I was like, I don't know what they're doing. And that's when I realized what profiling was. It said, you just got a nice Cadillac, you're in the city driving, you're Black. They're making sure it's not stolen. It's making sure you're clean. And so they followed me around, and then they let me go, and they just drove off. But I can definitely attest, if you have nice cars and you live in the Adirondacks and you're Black, getting pulled over, it's automatic.
And I can attest for that. Just recently during quarantine, me and my family, we drive pretty decent cars, pulled over repeatedly, and the reasons are unacceptable. And I always look at it like this: if I'm getting pulled over for something, at least give me the ticket. Don't say if it's not a moving violation or something. If and some people may say, well, you just think that, but if you're being pulled over for a reason, you expect to have some kind of outcome. And if the pullover was off of, well, we couldn't read your tag, or we didn't see your insurance information, and you're asking about warrants and jobs and where you live, to me personally, it's kind of suspicious of why I've been pulled over in the first place. If I wasn't, if it wasn't a moving violation. That's just me, and I'm sure you guys feel the same based off of your responses. Let me move to the next question. When you see a car with a Black driver pulled over, should we stop, film it, ask the officer what is happening? What are your thoughts?
I honestly don't know. Definitely stop and film it and be an advocate. But I don't know about like just really poking and prodding and trying to instigate the situation. Just kind of keep your distance, film it, and if things start to go awry, then you got to step in and advocate. But
And Matthew, your thoughts?
Yep, the same exact thing. Keep your distance. Don't poke the bear. But I wish I had people recording when I was pulled over, so that would be greatly appreciated now.
Okay, we have a comment. It says, "My biggest fear is just getting tired and giving up. My best friend and I had a conversation about being pulled over. Her, okay, I guess she went free from getting a ticket because she was white. My fear is losing my life. They said I drive an hour one way to work each day. I obey every single law. The person said my husband, on the other hand, can drive more freely. He's also white. I freak out a lot because I never want to get pulled over. Driving at night is one of my biggest or one of my greatest fears." So that's a comment from one of the listeners. Your dad, okay. Okay, let's see. The questions, please, right? Okay, and what about, somebody had a question that says, and what about the African-American state trooper? Is he in Tupper Lake? As he too is driving while black, how has he been received as a law enforcement officer? So I'm assuming it may be a black officer in Tupper Lake. How is he being received as a law officer? Are any of y'all familiar with this officer?
I haven't lived up there in a year, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Kudos to him though.
Okay, we have. Okay. All right. We have actually a listener who wants to, a black male who wants to get involved in the conversation tonight. We have about 10 minutes. So technical assistance, if you can open up his video and allow him to speak, that would be great. In the meantime, while they're working on that, his name is Jeff. If you can open him up, that would be wonderful. Hughey, if you can open him up so he can speak. And Jeff, if you're here, if you can unmute and open up your video, that would be wonderful. We have another question. How do you keep moving forward? Okay, yeah, that's a great question. They want to know, how do you keep moving forward and not give up with everything that's going on? Any of y'all can answer that.
Keep having these conversations and just keep trying to take action. So, I mean, you got to take action. If you don't take action, then it's pointless. So yeah, I mean,
they want to know how do we as black people deal with these realities every day and keep pushing forward. That's a really good question.
It ain't easy.
It is. It's not. It's almost to the point like it happens so much that you almost become numb to it.
Right.
As sad as that may sound.
Yeah, and that is sad, because even having this, setting up this session, this understanding, like, to the point where these things are normal occurrences for us, where we've kind of gotten, like, this is just what it is, even though we disagree with it. It's sad, but it's a reality of being a black person, and particularly being a black male in America, that you face, that you learn how to navigate, and just how this country operates. Matt, did you want to chime in? And then Mr. Hughey, if you would like to speak in a minute, that would be wonderful. Matt, did you want to chime in on that as well?
I'll give it to Mr. Hughey. Give him the floor, and it looks like he's ready, so I'll give it to him.
Okay, Mr. Hughey, you expressed that you wanted to participate in this conversation as a black male in the Adirondacks. What did you want to say?
Well, hold on just a minute.
Yes, echoing.
Okay, sorry about that, gentlemen. First, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, so first I wanted to say how I was telling how very interesting and engaging this is. Clifton and Dominique and Matthew. Oh, I'm sorry. My wife said, tell me who I am. My name's Jeff Hughey. I lived in, I've born and raised in New York City, 18 years of my life. I came up to the Adirondacks to go to college. I've been in the Adirondacks now for over 30 years. I'm sorry, sweet. Yeah, man. My wife, she don't even come on, but she wants to tell me what to say. So anyway, yeah. So been here for over 30 years. Like you gentlemen, I also have been pulled over multiple times. Unlike my son, which it breaks your heart and it makes you very angry when there are weapons that are drawn, because that is your son that you have raised as best you can, and you want him to be a successful part of the community and society. And for others to not value him, or to be afraid of him, or of Dominique, or of Clifton, or of any other of these young black men and women, to be afraid of us just by the viewing of us, without even getting to know our character or who we are, or see the hard work that it took to raise our children in the right way. And there are bad children, regardless of what color you are. You make mistakes, but to have our children treated a certain different way based on historical fears of who we are is heartbreaking. It does make you have concerns about raising your own children in this great nation that we have, but it does give you concern that your Caucasian counterparts just don't understand. They just cannot relate to the, I don't say fear. My wife would say fear, and I won't take that away from her. I'll say concern that you have when your children go out. You expect them to go out and for nothing to happen, and then when they come home and tell you stories, again, it breaks your heart and it makes you very angry at the same time. And all I can say to you gentlemen is kudos for keeping you cool, for being pulled over so many times. Kudos for keeping you cool.
Yeah, and thank you for your input. We actually had a question about children. I know we don't have a lot of time.
Actually, I'm gonna get off. I didn't have a question either. So I'm
No. You're fine, but you brought up a good point, because somebody had a question about children. They say, if you have children, were any of them with you when you were pulled over, and how did it impact them? And I know I've been in that situation. Personally, my son, he just sits there, puts his head down, and I guess he's hoping for a good outcome. Anybody else?
Yeah, all my children are under the age of 8. Yeah, we have 4 under the age of 8, and I've only been pulled over once with them in the car while I was up there. And yeah, it was the same thing. Some of them were too young to know what was going on. My oldest was probably about 6 at the time. So he kind of understood, because we've always talked to him about, like, when you go in public and if this happens, this is how you need to react to, whatever, police officers or just people in general. So he kind of knew what was going on. I was just happy that it was just a cordial stop. So yeah, yeah, that's all.
And Matthew, really quickly, we don't have too much time. We have a lot of questions, and I thought we would have enough time to answer a whole bunch of questions. But Matthew, if you can respond to that, and I'll try to fit in one other question, and hopefully, I don't mind going over, but I'm not sure how our technical people would feel about that. But Matthew?
Yeah, real quick. So I was actually pulled over with my dad. He had another night, a BMW from New York City one night. Well, he had it, and then one night I was driving with him. I was maybe 10, 11 years old, and it was a beautiful BMW. We were listening to music. We were driving from the gym back home, and a cop, sure enough, pulls us over just because he says our music is too loud. And I'm in the car. My dad's in the car. We're both black, tinted windows, BMW. It wasn't a disturbance. It was like 6, 7 o'clock at night. It wasn't anything. But sure enough, as we talked about again, my dad actually knew the officer. So we pulled him over. Hey, how's your volleyball league? Blah, blah. And he's just like, you keep your music down, whatever the case may be. But it was a very scary instance, because you just know that it's because your dad's black and you're black, and that's it. So.
Okay, well, real quick, we had a question. I think this is a very relevant question. The person asked, where are the women participants? Believe me, I would love to have different perspectives, but like I said earlier in the beginning of this conversation, a lot of people backed out of fear of retaliation. And it says a lot, and this was very informative for me, and I understand it, that even though no one's on this call is saying they hate the police, and a lot of the basically both of the panelists are friends with police. Yeah. That even just having to tell a story about your experience caused a lot of people to feel uncomfortable because of retaliation. And for the listeners who are white, who aren't black, who don't understand, this is the part of the reality of being black that many people don't understand. By telling our stories, by even saying anything, you get put into a situation where you can be retaliated against. If you notice, I didn't mention people's careers. I didn't really mention any of that stuff, solely out of their protection. Because there are people who might not like the fact that they're on here even mentioning having a problem with the police. Or because they're black and they're saying something, people may want to retaliate against them. So hopefully out of protecting them, I left that information out. But we may have, women participants may have felt the same way and decided that they didn't feel safe, primarily because in the Adirondacks, there aren't a large percentage of black people living here. And also the climate that's going on right now, people are scared. They're scared to speak because people have jobs, people have kids, people have mortgages, and people don't want that to be affected. I want to say something. Hopefully my moderators behind the scenes can let me know if we can go over a little bit because we have a lot of questions. And I really thought that this conversation would be best informal like it is because people feel more comfortable to ask questions. So let me just see if I can get a couple real quick. They wanted to know, is there any reason why any of you all haven't made a complaint? Just really quickly, if you can sum it up so I can kind of speed through these questions.
Had to be what?
Why anyone hasn't made a complaint to the police department?
Oh. I'd talked, Plattsburgh's a small community. I'd talked to, like I said, troopers and my friends that are officers. Instead, I just went to them and they gave me advice. They knew and I knew that going that direction wouldn't go far right now. Mm-hmm. Not yet. The city's not ready for it. It's not. You can think that that's the right way, but we're not there yet. So they gave me the advice that they gave me, and I left it at that.
Okay, and Dominic.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the same thing. I necessarily didn't talk to anybody. It was just kind of like one of those things of like, what's it really gonna do?
Yeah. And I agree with you. It's like, okay, what's gonna really happen? Because a lot of people feel like, even today, some people may feel like, listening to you all, you must have been doing something wrong. How do you know you were profiled? And when you're in that type of situation, it's like, what do you do?
Right.
So we all have that same feeling about those type of interactions. Another question, there was a recent incident where police allegedly shot a young black man and then lied about the incident. Allegedly, the person said, do you agree that incidents like this reinforce the wide perception that the mainly white Adirondacks is not comfortable with increased diversity? So I guess the overall question is, do you feel from your experiences here that this area is comfortable with having black people here or people of color?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think they are. I talked to a lot of people. I think they think they are, but I'll be quick. The way they treat us, the looks, the vibe, the conversations, you can read their body language, everything like that. As much as we'd like to think, as I like to think they are, I don't think they're ready for a more majority of diversity yet. I think we're going that direction, but I don't think it's there yet.
Okay, so really quick, Dominic, do you have anything you want to say to that?
No, I agree. Yeah, Adirondacks is kind of a progressive, but not progressive area.
Okay, so I just got permission. We can go over to 7:15. So if any of the listeners or people that are on the call want to ask a question, we still have a little bit of time. And gentlemen, if you want to say anything else or express any other views or opinions regarding your experience here, maybe not just with law enforcement, but just in general, I personally I live in the Adirondacks. I'm pretty new to this part of North Country. I lived in Watertown at one point, and since I've been in this area, I see a lack of diversity when it comes to businesses. So has that type of thing impacted you as well? One of my main issues is finding a black barbershop or a black restaurant. Some basic things. So, what are your thoughts on that? Because it's been a big push to get black people to the Adirondacks, but it doesn't seem like there are services that cater to or even are welcoming to black or diverse populations here. What are your thoughts, real quickly? I have somebody that's trying to get into the conversation. Let me check on that, but please express your thoughts.
I'll let you go first, Matt. You've been here. You've been there longer than me.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the sad part, to answer your question, Clifton, me being here as long as I have, I've seen the black barbers come and go. They just can't keep business. There's not, unfortunately, most of their business is sustainable when Plattsburgh State is in session. They'll come then, but then once they're closed down, there's not enough, there hasn't been enough diversity, and with other businesses alike, I'm not racist at any means, but the Adirondacks isn't ready for that kind of business yet, for diverse business to support that. I don't think yet. There's still a lot of inner opinions about black people that they might not voice publicly, but I've had too many conversations privately with a lot of people in the Adirondack that they're just not comfortable with it yet.
Okay, and Dominic, really quickly, because we have Jeff, he wants to get involved, and I'm curious because he's an older guy. He has way more experience than we have. So Dominic, did you have anything you wanted to say, or do you want to leave the last 5 minutes over to Jeff?
No, I'll pass it over to Jeff. I agree with Matt. And when it comes to barbers, I learned how to cut my own hair when I moved up there.
Yeah. All right, so I'm sorry, Jeff. I'm happy that you're participating. Please share your opinions and your knowledge before we get off. And we have about 10 minutes, 5 minutes. So the rest of the time is yours.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Again, I appreciate this panel, this discussions of something that needs to be discussed. And I hope this actually isn't the last one. I really hope this continues, because when we have these conversations and then they fall off the map, we need to continue these conversations and engage more people like the panels that you had hoped to have would participate. The one thing I wanted to share is my successes. So yes, I've been pulled over by the police. Every experience I've had with the police has not been sour, has not been bad. There's been a couple, but for most of them, they've been good. But my success story in the Adirondack has been this. I've been able to endure the name calling, the cold shoulders, the poor treatment. I've been able to endure that, and Matthew can attest to this, have great conversations with my Caucasian brothers and sisters about our experiences. What I've been able to do is allow them to speak their fears, allow them to talk about why they're afraid, what they see on the television, what they see in the movies, the things that really shake them to the core, and allow them the freedom to speak. And some of it is pretty, I'll use the word unbalanced, uninformed, and sometimes just kind of shocking that sometimes my friends and coworkers think the way they think. But giving them the freedom to speak their mind and to speak their fears gives me the opportunity to educate them as best that I can and keep them engaged. I try not to hurt them with their words or make them feel small. I'll just use the word stupid. I try to engage in them, and it keeps the conversation moving. And what I've noticed is the ones who are really interested and they really feel comfortable about asking questions that may be deemed offensive with some, is that when I allow them to ask those questions and we engage in these conversations, later on and they come back and ask more questions. And they seem to be more open-minded. Not always changed, but more open-minded, which is always a good thing when you can get a chance to open up someone's mind and engage in conversation, and they grow. I even hear them talk about my son and daughter. I felt a certain way. My son and daughter told me that I was racist or ignorant. I want to know what you think. And the only way they can come to me and come to Dominique and to Clifton and to Matthew and to the others who are listening is if we are willing to engage in the conversation. I would love for it to be a mass conversation, but sometimes just the one-on-ones go very far. And that's kind of all I wanted to say is I really hope, Clifton and ADI, that these conversations, meetings continue on, because I don't want this to die. This could be the impetus to the change that we need.
Yeah, and yeah, it really comes down to this informal, real conversations where we can really get to the meat and potatoes. That's my personal viewpoint, where people can see that we are human. We all the same. We all have common grounds to some degree. And I think those interactions will really help long term, where we're not looked at as others. I think that's the most important part. But it's also understandable due to our history in this country. You know, if everything you see shows a black person as man, or a black person in general as a rapist, a murderer, a criminal, a thug, just anything that's despicable, even though I don't agree with it, if I was on the other side of things, you never know, why wouldn't you feel that way if that's all you're exposed to? And I think in a conversation as well, we're not even looking at the global impact of these stereotypes that have been pushed about us for hundreds of years around the world, globally. Because there are other minority groups that put us on the bottom of all minorities, you know? So, you know, it's just something to think about. We're about to wrap up, but we would like to thank everyone. I personally would like to thank everyone for attending this session. I know it's a little different from some of the ones we've done in the past, but I kind of felt that an informal tone would probably be the most appropriate tone for this conversation. And hopefully people have gotten something out of this conversation, and those conversations do keep going, Jeff. Dominic, I would like to thank you for coming back and sharing your experience, and Matthew, the courage to be a local resident and still expressing your views. I really hope that these stories and these experiences really impact how we are viewed on the Adirondacks, but also how we are engaged with and interacted with in regards to law enforcement. Jeff, thank you, Elder, for getting on the call. I appreciate it. Hope everyone learned something. If you have any other questions, please contact the Adirondack Diversity Initiative, and hope you all have a good night. Panelists, if you could stay behind after this call, I would appreciate it. Thank you again.
Good night, guys.